Hey everybody! Today I want to broach a very, very sensitive subject, and I feel like I almost need to put like a little bit of a trigger warning in front of this because it's something that lays heavily on my heart because I actually have experienced it so much in the organization, and I also don't want to hurt anybody's feelings and like keep their integrity because there's a lot of pain associated with this. But the topic I want to talk about is suicide in the organization. And I don't know if this is something that you guys have realized or noticed in your own life, but again, I moved around a lot, so we've been in several congregations, many different congregations on different continents, and I've met a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses. But what I never put together, like two and two, is that there was so much suicide around me. I can just count the instances of suicide, and it is wild because it's almost as if I grew up with suicide and it is a normal occurrence. But now that I have left the organization and I look around, I realize that this is not a normal occurrence in people's life to be around suicide like this. And one of the things that's very, very heartbreaking is that people believe it's the truth or don't know how to get out of it if they don't believe it's the truth. And in any case, I just see extreme unhappiness. And one of the cases that really breaks my heart, and I loved this kid. He was such a little sweetie. And I want to maintain people's integrity. But basically, the story of him, I want to relate because my goal is to help people. My goal is for someone to be able to hear this and maybe is in a similar situation and realize that there is a way out, that suicide is not the answer, that there is something that we can do about, that there's life after the organization, that there's life after these people who pretend to be so Christian and kind and are really anything but. But the kid in this story, we're going to call him Sean. He was actually not only in my congregation, but he was in my book study group. So he was like in my service group and my book study group. Our conductor was a real piece of work. He was truly like mean. He was ex-military. He was very regimented. I don't think he was like kind toward children at all. And it just was really hard to see what this kid went through. So when I moved to the hall, I was really glad. And I tried to take him in service, like with our group, because his aunt and uncle were raising him. His mom, she really just had some troubles, and she went through a lot. The mom really did. And so everybody felt like it was really good for the kid to be in the spiritual paradise, to be raised by aunt and uncle. And so he had moved in with aunt and uncle. They had custody of him, and the uncle was an elder. Well, at the time when I was in the hall, he was a ministerial servant, but he became an elder soon after. Then his crazy aunt was a pioneer, and they were venerated in the hall. And the more I was in the hall, I realized these are not nice people at all. They loved titles, they loved rules, regulations, and they were not kind. So one of the days, my mom was in the hall with me, and the crazy pioneer aunt, she asked my mom, she's like, "Oh, you did such a good job with her." She asked my mom for advice how to raise Sean because she felt that my mom did a good job raising me. Like, what's your key? What's your advice? And we had seen how aunt and uncle were with the kid. And so my mom's like, I really need to help her, like, be nicer to Sean. And so she said, the key is love. Like, the key is always be loving and kind. And the aunt just bristled at that. That's so not what she wanted to hear. She wanted to hear like those, don't spare the rod or whatever. You could totally tell this was not what she was looking for. And for us, you know, we just tried to invite him in our service group so he could just, and I gotta say, like, my parents were so chill. If we needed a break, we took a break. If we wanted to not go anymore. And so, like, other people in our particular book study group were so hardcore. No breaks, no eating in the car. Thankfully, I did not grow up like this. So it was nice for Sean to be able to go with us, I feel like, and get a little bit of a break. But you saw him grow up into a teenager and really struggling with his life. And he was a sweetheart, the brightest smile. And again, it's like this ruse of elder and pioneer that you think like this is the ideal situation. And it's such a front, like it's such a fake front to think that people are good people just because they have titles. It's really disgusting. And his brother was a lot older than him. He was a really good friend of mine. He is such a good guy. We had been friends for a long time, and I would think that he probably also thought this was a really good situation, you know, to be with this spiritual family of his. So one day in a comment, the aunt and uncle, they were kind of like bragging how they were raising Sean. And they said, oh, now he's in middle school, and if he's acting up, what we do is we make him wear suit and tie to school as like public shaming to go to school, and then he won't act up anymore. And I kind of bristled at that. Plus, I'm sure you guys have experienced this before as well, but this was during a comment, during like the book study or Watchtower, I don't remember, but I just remember that they said this during a comment while the kid was sitting there. So it's like another public shaming. Not only does he have to go to school being publicly shamed, now he's getting shamed at the Kingdom Hall, which I feel like Jehovah's Witnesses thrive on public shaming. The fact that you're supposed to sit there while you're getting disfellowshipped, all those things I find so awful, so awful. And this kid was being public shamed, and the whole congregation is laughing like, ha, that's so funny. Have you guys noticed this? They do this all the time. On things that aren't funny, that are really horrifying, the congregation laughs and thinks it's such a joke. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Because middle school is awful. I mean, if you have the wrong sneakers, and it's messed up and it's wrong. And I wish kids weren't so cruel. Like, if a kid showed up being publicly like shamed by his parents, I would never have mocked him. I just can't imagine why other human beings have to do this. Why do we mock anyone anyways? It's so awful. And middle school is a very, very hard time, especially if you're shy, especially if you belong to a fringe religion that you feel already makes you kind of weird, you know? So if you are being publicly shamed like that, I can't even imagine how awful that is. And so for Sean, he had to go to school enduring this, but then he also had to go home with these two psychos. And it just was a very, very rough life for him. And I don't think that we realized how hard it was for him, because until one day, one of his little buddies at the Kingdom Hall went up to my mom, and he said to my mom, Sean's auntie, the pioneer, she's an evil woman, a very, very evil woman. Imagine that. And what do you do? What do you do? We have such like stop thinking in the congregation where something alerts you and you don't know what to do. I think your one thing that you think you should do is go to the elders, but it doesn't even cross your mind to talk to Sean, to seek help, to, investigate further. You're kind of shell-shocked. And so you stand there as a groomed cult member, not knowing what to do with this information. And it breaks my heart because my mom got a phone call shortly after that from another elder's wife who we were kind of close to, and she was in shock. And she said, Sean committed suicide. And it just broke my heart. It broke my heart too, because I feel like we let him down. I feel like we didn't realize that he needed so much help. I feel like it's heartbreaking to see someone you were so close to and shared laughs. I really truly think we were so happy when we were with him in service, and I feel like he had a glimpse of being himself and just being silly with us. He would make silly faces, and he was so goofy, and part of me feels really guilty too, because I was not in that congregation for a long time. I got married and moved to another congregation, and it was before you could text people. And what am I, not going to text this little kid, really. But I do feel like I wasn't there for him. I think we all feel guilty, and it is so heartbreaking and wrong. And I really think that what he endured at home was so much worse than what we can all imagine. And a lot of times I feel like in the organization, there's heartbreak and heartache back to back to back, constant disappointments. But when Sean had his memorial service at the Kingdom Hall, I remember being there, and it was a really nice turnout, really. But everybody rallied around elder uncle and pioneer aunt, and it really felt like his actual mom who was there and the brother were nobody cared about them. They didn't have titles. It was so hard to see, this is all family, and it seems to be the elite were the ones that everyone gave comfort to, but everyone else suffered too. His brother suffered, his mother suffered, and it's so cruel. And sometimes I think when you're in the organization, you can't really explain this phenomenon, but it's soft shunning. When people kind of leave you in left field and they're just there for the elite, it's soft shunning. We felt it, we didn't know how to name it, but that's exactly what it is. And so basically these two family members who were in so much agony with all this situation were soft shunned at their own son/brother's memorial service, and that is just heartbreaking. And when I look at how many kids have committed suicide because of this cult, and also it's not only kids who have a horrible life. My kid went outside yesterday to play ball in the street with the neighbor's kid, and I looked at my worldly hubby and I said, I just realized how happy I am that our kids have freedom to go outside and play ball with the neighbors, something so simple. But if you have extreme Jehovah's Witness parents, you're not even allowed to play ball in the street with the neighbors. You're not even allowed to go hang with your friends in the neighborhood. How stifling and horrible that is. And to the development of a child, how awful. I mean, really. And then it's not only the kids that are going through so much in these important years and so much depression. It's also adults who wake up and then don't have a way out. I talked about that in the episode about Jehovah's Witnesses and drinking, one of our friends' story. I'll link it in the description of this video. So that was a heartbreaking story that we experienced. And then I know another friend of ours, I'm so certain he woke up. I heard, you hear these things and, he's not going to meetings anymore. He's asking questions. And so I can put two and two together and realize that he woke up while his family was still going to meetings and being spiritual and stuff. And he was trying to quit, and you really can't. You're so entangled. So he committed suicide and he has kids. It's just really heartbreaking. And my saying to you is this: I know it's depressing. I know it seems like there's no way out, but there is. And sometimes the way out is tough, but worth it. So if you feel like you've hit the end of the road and there's no other answers, there is. And even if your family shuns you, you don't know if maybe they will wake up themselves. I'm telling you, I was a person, I remember I had moved from one state to another, and a friend was like really worried about me moving. And she's like, I'm just so afraid, like people move and they lose touch with their congregations and they will leave Jehovah. And I was really offended by that. Like, why would anybody even think that of me? Like, I go to all the meetings, I give my all in service, I study. And one of my friends who was Pimo, she listened, like when I was waking up, she said I was the last person she ever pictured waking up because I was so in. And I really was. I took it really seriously. Like my heart was in it. But it was really the other people in the organization that helped me wake up, because the two things didn't align. What we were learning didn't align to what I was seeing. And one of the things that got me the most is pedophilia, that it wasn't handled right. So you don't really know who's going to wake up. And you can build a life outside of this, even if the road is tough. But please just don't think that because you leave on your own that it's the end of the road. It's not. I know so many people who left all on their own, and it wasn't really their choice, and they built their life up and they made families that aren't blood. So I'm just saying this, like, please don't lose hope. There is such a great life on the other side of this. Seek therapy. If you need medication to deal with what you're dealing with, it's okay. It's okay, but there is help. Reach out. I think one of the things that I really, really need to put close to people's heart is how important therapy is. I think especially as Jehovah's Witnesses, therapy always had a really bad reputation. I knew back when I even was a witness that I had to seek, like at the time, marriage counseling. But just to be able to talk to someone helped me so much. I really thought, like at the time, that I was going to lose my marbles. And talk therapy is powerful. Even Tom Brady, he had a friend in high school who went into psychology, and he kind of like, in a way, nudged Tom Brady to open up and talk. And it's so good to have these like guys, like these male role models who talk about it openly, who say, hey, this really worked for me. Hey, this was really powerful for me. Because I feel like there's such a taboo, especially for guys, that like this isn't a thing that guys do or whatever, but it is, and it's important, especially if we struggle with depression, especially when we grew up the way we did, especially if we were in some way connected to a high control group or a high control relationship. It's just really, really important. And I was so happy to hear that Tom Brady made it okay, that Tom Brady said that to this day he still seeks therapy. Like, it's okay. It helps us. Don't feel shame. It really is a very, very good thing. And emotions are real. Emotions aren't just for women. Emotions are for everyone. We're all emotional. Every single person has feelings. And that's a good thing. It's a good thing. Feel your feelings. Say how you feel. Be real. Seek help. There is help. I am, of course, not a mental health professional, but I'm just here to say that there is help. And I'm going to try to link as many things in the section underneath with help, like when we leave a cult, how we can find help. There is help. Please don't give up. And I'm just like thinking of all the people that we've lost. There's countless of people in my life that I know personally who committed suicide. And it is just like so heartbreaking. We had a guy who worked for my grandpa's office, and he was like super in the religion, and one of his sons got disfellowshipped, and then shortly after that, the other son committed suicide. So essentially, this guy, who's still a Jehovah's Witness, lost both his kids because he shuns one and lost the other. And even like the Leah Remini Scientology and the Aftermath show, such an excellent show. I highly recommend it. I'm going to link that below too. There's an episode on Jehovah's Witnesses, and I watched it with my hubby when we were dating, just so he can kind of get a feel of what Jehovah's Witness life is like. And I had to tell him that was not my experience as a Jehovah's Witness, because thankfully my parents were not extreme at all. Like, I totally had a life. I was able to play with the neighbors' kids and stuff, so thankfully. But I know plenty of kids who did grow up like this. And in this episode with Leah Remini on the Jehovah's Witnesses, there was just death, suicide, heartache, and shunning. And it was so heartbreaking that my hubby had to like take a break from watching it. It's like, if you watch the Scientology show, the episodes on actual Scientology, it's the same thing. Suicide, heartache. It's just heartbreaking. And really, like, when I was going through like all the people that I can take account of who even struggle, like not being a Jehovah's Witness anymore, but somewhat believing it's still the truth. They're depressed, or things that has happened to them and they can't cope. It's a long list. And I'm sure everybody has experienced and not even realized that we've experienced so much heartache related to suicide in the organization. So if you want to share your stories below, it's just that you're not alone. Please know that you're not alone. There is help. You can do this, and life can be beautiful again on the other side of this. We can leave this cult and build up a life. We have the tools nowadays. We can work through understanding how cults work. We can do this. So I leave you with that, and thank you for listening.